What would you think if I told you that the woman who brings a man to his knees doesn't raise her voice, doesn't beg for his attention, and doesn't cling when he drifts away, but simply awakens? That her undoing of him begins not with seduction, but with consciousness, not with chaos, but clarity, not with need, but wholeness. She does not demand his change. She becomes a mirror so clean, so radiant, that his own darkness recoils in its reflection. But she was never meant to be understood through the lens of control. The spiritually awake woman is not a puzzle to be solved. She is a force to be respected. She has walked through her own valley of shadows, met the wounded girl within, and held her until she no longer screamed for validation. That journey cannot be faked, nor can it be forgotten. It lives in her posture, her eyes, her voice, each a hymn of survival, of sacred return. And so when a man meets her, he meets the consequence of her awakening. He meets a woman who no longer waits for reciprocity to be whole. A woman who does not need him to choose her in order to feel chosen. Because she has already chosen herself. She knows the taste of abandonment and the deeper flavor of self-reclamation. Her solitude is not a wound, it is a sanctuary. And for the man who lives in fragmented ego, that serenity can feel like rejection. It is not. It is an invitation. But not the kind he's used to. Not the kind that seduces him with comfort or adoration. No, this is an invitation into fire, into dismantling, into becoming. To stand beside her, he must first stand inside himself. He must learn to sit in silence without reaching for distraction, to be seen without performing, to feel without fleeing. She doesn't offer him safety in the traditional sense. She offers him sacred confrontation, the type that doesn't soothe his illusions but incinerates them. And in that flame, his old self begins to unravel. He may run. Most do. He may blame her, accuse her of being too much, too intense, too hard to love. But those accusations are never truly about her. They are confessions, veiled admissions of his inability to meet her level of depth. He wants her body but fears her soul. He craves her presence but flinches at her clarity. Because her clarity sees through him, sees through the armor, sees through the stories, sees the boy inside the man still begging for love without responsibility. And if he stays, if he surrenders to the discomfort, transformation begins. It is here, in the presence of a woman who no longer dances for his attention, that his real work starts. She does not initiate it with advice or pleading. She initiates it by refusing to abandon herself to accommodate him. She does not explain her worth, she lives it. And in doing so, she triggers either his collapse or his expansion. There is no in-between. Jungian psychology speaks of the anima, the feminine within the male unconscious. Most men never meet her. They project her onto women, onto lovers, onto romantic ideals that leave them endlessly dissatisfied. But when he meets her in real life, in a woman who has embodied her inner animus, her sacred masculine, it shocks the system. He can no longer project. He must integrate, and integration demands death. The death of the performer, the seducer, the victim, the controller. All of it must burn. The spiritually awake woman is not impressed by potential. She sees patterns, and unless those patterns are broken, her presence becomes a crucible, a place where everything false is revealed. She will not dim her light to soothe his shadows. She will not break herself to prove she's worthy of staying. She does not fall for potential. She listens for embodiment. And if he cannot rise, she will let him fall. Not out of cruelty, but out of reverence for her own becoming. She knows that to lower herself to meet him is to betray the very path that birthed her power. So she lets go. She lets go of the urge to fix, lets go of the dream of being chosen, lets go of the myth that love requires sacrifice of self. And in doing so, she becomes untouchable. Not because she's closed, but because she's complete. The man who once held power over her is now powerless, not because she punished him, but because he could no longer influence her self-worth. His undoing was never her vengeance. It was the natural consequence of her awakening. He cannot unsee what she showed him. Even if he walks away, even if he returns to women who flatter his ego and coddle his insecurity, something within him has shifted. The taste of her energy lingers, not like perfume, but like smoke after a sacred fire. He may try to forget her, to drown her memory in new bodies and shallow conquests, but the ache remains, not for her approval, not for her body, but for the man he glimpsed within himself when he stood in her light. That glimpse haunts him. It is a seed planted in the soil of his soul, one he cannot unplant. Because she didn't just offer him affection, she offered him evolution. She didn't merely reflect his charm, she reflected his emptiness, his wounds, his forgotten potential. She touched a place inside him that no applause could reach, a place no conquest could validate. You see, some women carry an energy that cannot be grasped, only felt and feared. And feared not because it's violent or volatile, but because it dissolves the illusions men hide behind. These are the women who have died once already, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically, and returned reborn. The ones who no longer confuse love with possession, who have made peace with solitude, who speak less but see more. And for the first time, he saw what it meant to be a man, not just appear as one. He saw strength that doesn't dominate, love that doesn't bind, power that doesn't boast. And it made him ache, not for her, but for himself, the self he has yet to become. This is the power of the spiritually awake woman. She doesn't demand submission. She awakens sovereignty. She doesn't compete with men, she calls them. She doesn't try to heal them, she shows them the path by healing herself. And her healing is not linear, not polite, not performative. It is wild, cyclical, elemental. She breaks apart, she bleeds, she burns. And from the ashes, she returns wiser. She stops living in the echo of someone else's need. She starts living in the rhythm of her own truth. And in doing so, she becomes uncontainable. Men who live through ego will call her uncontrollable. Men who live through fear will call her dangerous. But those who are brave, those who are ready, will see her for what she is, a sacred mirror, a spiritual catalyst, a living archetype of feminine rebirth. She is not for the faint of heart. She is not for the man who wants convenience. She is for the man who wants depth, who wants truth, who is ready to meet God in the form of a woman's soul. To stand with her is to stand with oneself. It requires a dismantling of every inherited belief about power, worth, and love. It asks him to peel back the armor, not with pride, but with humility. To admit what he doesn't know. To feel what he never dared feel. To learn intimacy not as possession, but as presence. She does not chase the man. She waits, not for him, but for clarity. And when clarity arrives, she either walks with him or walks away. Not with resentment, but with reverence. Because she knows his undoing is not the end, it is the beginning. If he chooses to rise, he will rise not for her, but because of her. Not to impress her, but to meet her. And if he does, if he embraces the descent and the ascent, something remarkable happens. He no longer needs her to validate his worth. He becomes sovereign, too. And in that sovereignty, there is space for love. Not as need, not as transaction, but as union. But even if he does not rise, she remains whole. She no longer waits for the unconscious man to awaken. She walks with the knowing that she is already enough. She lives with the understanding that her worth is not negotiable, and that knowing, that deep embodied peace, is what undoes him, because he cannot touch it. He cannot control it. He cannot replicate it in another woman who still fears being alone. That kind of peace is earned. That kind of peace is sacred. And once he has seen it in her, the illusion of all his past desires begins to crumble. She did not break him. She showed him the fracture. And the fracture he sees is not hers, it's his own. It is the split between who he is and who he pretends to be. The gap between his spoken convictions and his unspoken wounds. She didn't widen the chasm. She merely illuminated it. With her stillness, with her gaze, with her unwillingness to play roles that shrink her into comfort. She stood there, sovereign and serene, and refused to be smaller so he could feel larger. She would not diminish herself to make him feel divine. And that refusal, that sacred refusal, it shattered every illusion he built around masculinity. He can go back to the distractions, to the games, to the temporary highs of superficial validation. But he does so limping. Because now he knows. Now he's tasted something real. Something earned, not granted. Something rooted in wholeness, not lack. She didn't teach him with words. She taught him with being. And that is the most dangerous kind of lesson, for it cannot be forgotten. It's burned into his psyche, not as trauma, but as truth. He sees her in other women now, or tries to. He listens for her voice in laughter that doesn't know pain. He searches for her gaze in eyes that have never seen darkness, and he fails. Because once you've encountered a woman who has descended into her own underworld and returned with light in her hands, every mask becomes unbearable. Every pretense, every performance, every nice girl becomes paper thin. She didn't just ruin him for other women. She ruined him for mediocrity. But this too is grace, because that ruin is sacred. That undoing is a necessary unraveling. Without it, he remains asleep, dreaming of conquest while starving for connection. Without her, he continues to repeat cycles dressed as love. But with her memory seared into his soul, he can no longer lie to himself. He can no longer call submission intimacy. He can no longer call silence peace. He can no longer call control devotion. She took nothing from him. She simply made him see what was never there to begin with. Women who do not fill their time trying to be desired, but instead sit in stillness asking, is this aligned with my soul? To the unawakened man, she is intoxicating and terrifying all at once. He cannot name the force that draws him near, only that it doesn't feel like other women. She doesn't flatter his ego. She challenges its very foundation. She doesn't participate in his games, and that absence of response is louder than confrontation. And now the question stands like a silent storm inside him. Will I rise? Not for her, not to win her back, but because now he must. Because to remain in the shell of who he was feels like suffocation. He begins to read, to weep, to confront the ghost of his father, to face the mother wound he's buried under decades of avoidance. He begins to sit in solitude and finally hear the silence, not as punishment, but as invitation. He sees that the woman he lost was never the prize. The prize was what she pointed him toward, himself. But she is long gone, not physically, perhaps, but energetically. She no longer waits at the shore hoping he'll arrive. She's sailing to new lands, guided by the compass of her inner knowing. She carries no resentment, only remembrance. She honors the role he played in her evolution. even as she closes the chapter. Because she knows that true love is not clinging, it's release. And true power is not dominance, it's discernment. She no longer desires the man who cannot meet her. And yet, if he ever truly meets himself, if he bleeds and breaks and births his own becoming, she may feel him from a distance, not with longing, but with recognition. Because she knows what it costs to wake up. She knows what it means to lose everything that was never real in order to find the one thing that is soul. And soul cannot be seduced. It can only be revealed. The spiritually awake woman is no one's possession. She is no one's prize. She is no one's project. She is a portal to truth, to transformation, to the terrifying liberation of being fully seen. And if that becomes a man's undoing, then let him be undone. For it is in the unraveling that real manhood is forged, not in conquest, but in resurrection. She didn't want to break him. She wanted him to wake. And so he either wakes or he returns to sleep. But for her, there is no going back. Once a woman has stood at the edge of herself, stared into the abyss of abandonment, betrayal, and loneliness, and chosen to stay anyway, she becomes untouchable. Not unreachable, but untouchable by the noise, the games, the seduction of being almost loved. She has become the woman who no longer aches to be chosen, because she has chosen herself in the most sacred and permanent way. She walks through the world now, not as a question, but as an answer. She no longer wonders, am I enough? Instead, she asks, is this worthy of my presence? Her softness is no longer a currency to be traded for affection. It is a grace she bestows where truth lives. Her heart is not open to everyone, it is open to reality. And if that reality wounds, she bleeds with dignity. If it nourishes, she blooms without apology. Men still approach her, some with awe, others with the arrogance of taming, but she does not bend. She listens, but she does not dilute. She sees, but she does not save. She has retired from the battlefield of convincing and stepped into the sanctuary of clarity. Because she knows, the man who is for her will never need to be pulled. He will walk, bruised perhaps, but whole. Not because she healed him, but because he chose to heal himself. And in that rare meeting, where a man and a woman stand not as halves but as wholeness, the world shifts. There is no control, no fear-based roles, no silent contracts of emotional labor. Only truth, only presence, only fire and stillness wrapped in reverence. She no longer fantasizes about fairy tales. She craves the sacred ordinary, the eye contact that doesn't flinch, the silence that doesn't demand, the touch that asks nothing but gives everything. She knows now, love is not about fixing. Love is about seeing. And when a man sees her, not the projection, not the fantasy, but her, he doesn't fall in love. He rises into it, because that kind of love demands elevation. It demands the death of the ego and the birth of the soul. It demands that he stop trying to have her and start trying to meet her. And if he cannot rise, she does not chase. She does not shrink. She does not wait. She simply walks forward, free, whole. Because the woman who is awakened knows that her time, her heart, her sacred life are not bargaining chips. They are temples. And only those who kneel with integrity, who carry water from their own well, who speak not from hunger but from fullness, only they are welcome. Not because she needs their presence, but because she honors her own. The world may call her too much, too intense, too wise, too fierce, too soft. But she knows better now. She is not too anything. She is just enough for the man who has become everything he was born to be. And if that man never arrives, she remains sovereign, luminous, undiminished. Where others give warmth without boundaries, she gives presence with discernment. Where others demand promises, she listens for integrity. She sees the boy behind the man, the wound behind the mask, and not in a way that coddles, but in a way that pierces. And it is precisely this piercing that becomes his undoing. For a man who has built his identity on performance, on dominance, on applause from women who need saving, her gaze is an earthquake. She does not need saving. She has already saved herself, because the woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses. And that fact alone ruptures his myth. He cannot conquer what has no fear. He cannot impress what sees beyond his words. He cannot manipulate what doesn't depend on him. Her presence forces him to confront what he spent years avoiding, the emptiness beneath the persona, the shadow self screaming beneath the surface. Carl Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." And so it is with the man who meets the spiritually awake woman. She doesn't become his undoing because she tries to dismantle him. She becomes his undoing because her very being exposes where he is asleep. Her silence becomes an unbearable mirror. Her refusal to shrink awakens the parts of him still in hiding. And if he is not ready, this becomes a psychological war within, one where he will project onto her every fear he has yet to face. He will call her cold when she is simply clear. He will call her selfish when she sets boundaries. He will call her arrogant when she refuses to chase. But these are not her flaws. They are his fears reflected. Her power does not come from overpowering, but from embodying. She has integrated her shadow, kissed her scars, buried her need for external rescue. That integration breeds magnetism. That magnetism threatens any man still controlled by his need to be needed. To the spiritually unevolved, she is an anomaly. They mistake her depth for danger. But to the man who is awakening, she is a guide. One he didn't expect, and perhaps one he doesn't yet deserve. She calls him to rise, not by instruction, but by example. She does not tell him what to do. She becomes what he must become. Her love is not transactional. It is transformational. It says, if you want to meet me, come higher, and many cannot. Because to meet her is to die to the self he once clung to step into his own underworld, to strip away every projection he's cast onto women and face what remains when control is gone, to stop blaming the feminine for his wounds and begin fathering his own psyche. She is not here to parent him. She is here to walk with him, if he can walk beside her, not above her. And for that, he must become sovereign in his own soul. But few are ready. He may try to possess her, to tether her wildness into something digestible, domesticated,